Libra Sun and Rising, welcome to your May 2025 Astro Update. It's Raina here. All right, well, I'm going to get right to it because on April 30th, your ruler goes back into Aries, which is your opposite sign. So if you can remember back to the beginning of March, Venus retrograded, and it retrograded at 10 degrees of Aries. So through the month of March, and also Mercury retrograded in Aries as well. When was that? I think that was the middle of March. So you've had these hits to this, the house that you ruled, the seventh house in astrology, and that may have kind of mucked things up a little bit, any of your plans that you had. So if you're like planning on getting married, Mercury going retrograde there, you might have had the wrong reception hall and all these things, and now you're sorting out everything. By the middle of the month, both Mercury and Venus will be out of their shadow periods, because even after they go direct, they can still wreak havoc on our lives. So we have to pay attention to that. I'm so happy that May is going to see all this advancement, but it won't be until the second half when we really will feel that. And speaking of the other retrogrades that now are coming out of their shadow, Jupiter and Mars are going to on the 2nd of May. And there's another one, I think. Well, no, those are two. So I think that's what I'm mainly want to say. In terms of Venus going back into Aries in that 7th house, it may feel like your harmony is restored. You might have even had misunderstandings with a partner too. That's a possibility. Or maybe there was a salary negotiation, because Venus can be money, and Venus went back into the 6th house of work. So things should be resolved, and it's on both ends. It's also like, what do you value? If you can't get what you want, but you love what you do, are you going to quit? That's on you, that's up to you. On the 4th, Pluto goes retrograde at 3 degrees of Aquarius, or fellow air sign. Okay. All right, Libra. I think I talked about this. I have a separate reading on, Pluto going into somebody's 5th house, like a transit. But if not, I should do those Pluto transit readings. But I think I was talking about this when Pluto entered that sector. So I'm going to talk about it again very briefly. I'm going to touch upon it. Pluto in the 5th house, it does trine you, but when you look at Pluto as a transit, you have to be very careful about anyone, if you are single and looking, that you date, because Pluto can be that scorpionic, nothing against Scorpios, but that kind of obsessive, controlling type of person that you date. 5th house is love. It's the dating scene. But you might fall head over heels in love with someone and you don't even know why, and you become obsessed with this person. So it could be obsession on your part, but it could be that the other person is very questionable in terms of their motives. They may be very controlling and you don't see it coming. You don't see it coming until you're in too deep, in other words. So also the idea of love, because love when Pluto is here, it's transforming your idea of love. Well, you specialize in love, Libra, since you rule the 7th house. And pardon the trains outside. I just want to get my readings done, so sorry if you hear background noise. But I ended up having to pause it because it was distracting me, and now I'm hearing a plane like we're in a flight pattern or something. But anyway, the transformation of love is really about what is the nature of love, and everyone is going to have their own revelation when it comes to that, and this transit can do it, but also about, is love control, is power, these kinds of things, because sometimes, people hear it from their parents, I'm telling you this, I'm lecturing you because I love you, or I'm not letting you do this because I love you. And so it gets kind of, ingrained in us that love can be pain or restriction or something along those lines. So this can be a very important transit for you because I think Libra people in general, there are going to be outliers and unicorns and things like that, but Libra people tend to want to be in relationships. And I think it's only when they endure one shit show after the next that they go, whoa, wait a second, I think I'm going to fly solo for a while because this is not happening. And so if you've been in that camp, and I'm sorry for the profanity, somebody said they unsubscribed from me because I use profanity, and it's like, okay, well, I don't like to use it. I don't think it's a great thing, but yeah, I apologize. So it is sometimes very difficult to believe in something that has been so, such a difficult thing for you, if that has been your experience, Libra. But that in that particular case, it could be that you discover about yourself through this Pluto transit that you need to start stepping into your power. Pluto is about power. So love doesn't mean abdicating responsibility for oneself and just allowing somebody else to control you. Not saying that all of you do that, but if that has been part of the problem. So the Pluto retrograde is going back into you looking at your end of things. Even if you think that all these people in the past were the ones who messed up the relationship, maybe they were, but you were along for the dance. So what could you have done differently? Not blaming the victim, but really not looking at it from the perspective of a victim, looking at it from a perspective of self-empowerment. This is also good for artists. This would be a great time to read The Artist's Way, because that really kind of digs deeply into your power as an artist if you've been feeling clogged and, uninspired. Okay, so on the 10th, Mercury goes into Taurus, and so Taurus for you is the 8th house. Well, this is really deep stuff too. This is thinking about things at a psychological level. It's also about studying things of an occult nature, astrology, the tarot, or just reading books on this. Maybe this is also about shared resources. So there might be some kind of mail or document that has to do with a will, and maybe you have to deal with those matters. On the 12th or 13th, depending on where you live, we have a full moon at 22 degrees of Scorpio. Scorpio, by the way, is the ruler of the 8th house. So that's pretty interesting because that's just coming a couple days later. And for you, this is the 2nd house of earned income. So there is this money angle here in May for you. And this could be receiving some sort of raise, or it might be some bonus or commission that you get. You might be ending a source of income. Always a possibility. On the 20th, the sun goes into Gemini, trining you, coming from the ninth house. So Jupiter is there. Have you been wanting to travel, had the experience to travel in the past year since Jupiter has been in your ninth house, Libra? Or has that been something that for some reason hasn't materialized? Only if you want to, obviously. On the 24th, Saturn goes into Aries. Wow, your opposite house. Okay, I do have a separate video on that, and also Neptune going into your 7th house, so please just scroll down on my channel. It's a recent video for your sign, for your sun or rising sign in Libra, so check that out. But yeah, I mean, this could be something that is, if you're coupled right now, Saturn, there's a saying that when Saturn goes through this area, if the relationship is relatively sound, that it will survive it. But if the relationship is not happening, it won't survive it, because Saturn doesn't want anything not viable. So take that for what it's worth. I'm sure there are relationships that suck that survive Saturn transits, but it can be like, I always see Saturn as a test, so it could be a test to the relationship. Something happens that puts a strain on it. And really, if you are, the fact that Pluto is retrograding in your 5th house, this is a great time to look at your own behavior in love. Some people think, I'm in love, and so I should just lose my, self in somebody else. Well, is that wise? Is that really wise to do that? And I certainly don't think it is. I think we are individuals, but Libra rules the 7th house of the collective. So you are much more, not the collective, the partnership. So you are more geared to look at yourself as part of a partnership. And because that's the kind of thing that you are looking for. And that's perfectly fine. That is in alignment with what you represent. However, it doesn't mean that you can't also maintain yourself as an individual. That's all. That's all I'm saying, and I think that's all this really means. So keep that in mind. On the 25th, Mercury goes into Gemini. So Mercury is in that 9th house. Yeah, and Mercury can be paperwork, your passport, whatever you need to travel. You could be communicating with an institution of higher learning. Maybe you are going to college or back to college. On the 26th, 27th, depending on where you live, new moon at 6 degrees of Gemini in this sector. So something that you're embarking upon, maybe of a spiritual nature. And maybe you're combining those things. You're going to study Hatha Yoga in an ashram in India. Covering all the bases. Yeah, it's possible. And the thing is, the 9th house is a house of expansion. So that really speaks to what Jupiter represents while it's still in this sector. Which, by the way, I have to say that this is a general reading, because you're not all going to have these transits when, I mentioned the dates. I remember an astrologer doing that once when I was just like a listener of astrology. And I remember being devastated. And I'm like, what do you mean? I thought these were all, supposed to be when you said that they were supposed to be. Why are you changing this? And then I started studying astrology and predictive astrology. And I was like, oh, I get it. Because, your natal chart, and that's the main thing. So if you're listening to this reading, Libra, as for Sun in Libra, your rising sign will take it to a whole new level, because that is the basis of the natal chart. And the natal chart is used in predictive purposes. I can't tell you the percentage of the time, but I dare say most of the time is probably accurate. And therefore, you may be thinking in terms of your Libra transits, and you might have Taurus rising, and Taurus rising transits are going to be more accurate for your day-to-day life in terms of predictions. So, anyway, it's going to, these things will tend to happen eventually, so you can look at it that way. But if you would like to know now what your next year is looking like, I do have a transit reading that covers the next 12 months. And if you also want to know what your natal chart is like, I have a combination reading with both of those things called my deep dive reading. There are 2 full-length readings, at least an hour each, for a special price. And if you like the tarot, I have one with all 3 of those readings called the whole enchilada, but I do sell those readings separately. And I have love readings, career readings, even readings looking at your child's natal charts. Not predictions for your child, but just looking at if you want to understand them better or whatnot. You can find out more information at the link below. Have a great month, Libra. Bye.